The way they looked at her, my granddaughter, Savannah, like she was a shiny new toy they'd just unwrapped, but one they already knew how to break. That look? That's the real tea. The kind of silence that screams betrayal louder than a siren. They thought their power was a shield, that their Hamptons money and that big-shot Wall Street name, Sterling, made them gods. They were dead wrong. The moment they signed the papers and brought her into that family, they handed me the blueprint to their whole operation. Now that same blueprint, it's a map to their ruin. No cap, this is about to be a blockbuster. If stories like this, stories of women who hit back harder, who rebuild empires out of the ashes of their hearts, are your vibe, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now and hit that like button. You won't get a more raw, more real look into what a woman will do when her back is against the wall. This is for all the ladies who were told to smile and sit pretty. Let's dive in. My name is Vivian Sloan. I'm 64, run a low-key, high-return real estate game down in Charleston, and I've got eyes everywhere. People think because I'm a Southern belle with good manners and a nice spread of gray hair, I'm just knitting blankets. Honey, I'm knitting nooses. I've been around the block, and I know a snake when I see one, even if it's wearing a $4,000 suit and driving a Tesla. Savannah, my grandbaby, she was the real deal. Bright, spunky, and way too sweet for the viper's nest she flew into. She met Beckett Sterling at Columbia. Rich kid, charming, whole 9 yards. Total walking red flag, but Savannah was blinded by the sparkle. His family, the Sterlings, they were old money with a capital O, the kind that treats anyone outside their circle like they're the hired help. They owned a massive compound out on the East End, not some cheesy summer rental. I mean a legacy estate, all dark wood and icy marble. And they owned Beckett. The matriarch, Genevieve Sterling, was a piece of work. An ice queen with a socialite smile and a lawyer's brain. Her husband, Elias Sterling, was the patriarch, the big finance bro who built his empire on other people's busted dreams. They had Beckett and a younger daughter, Tatum, who was just as spoiled and high-key extra as they come. I told Savannah, "Baby girl, that family's got a toxic vibe. They're gonna swallow you whole." But she was in love. Or she thought she was, which for a girl that age is the same damn thing. She married Beckett in a wedding that was so over the top, it was straight up obnoxious. I sat there at a table way off to the side, wearing my best vintage Chanel and sipping iced tea, watching Genevieve air-kissing her friends and Elias barking orders, and I just knew this whole thing was a ticking time bomb. A year into the marriage, the cracks started showing. Beckett, turns out, wasn't just charming. He was controlling, a straight-up narcissist. He'd micromanage Savannah's life, her clothes, her friends, even her damn career. She'd call me crying, trying to play it off like, "Oh, he's just intense, Nana. He loves me so much." But the tea was, he was keeping her isolated. Then came the business move. Elias, always chasing the next big power grab, needed a clean face for a major corporate merger, something that smelled less like their predatory firm and more like Main Street honesty. He had this small, successful tech startup they wanted to absorb, but the founder was tight with his employees and was hesitant to sell to a known shark. The Sterlings cooked up a scheme that was so extra and so messed up, it makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. They convinced Beckett to put Savannah's name on some shell corporations, a gift, they called it, for their anniversary. A way to secure her future. Then, Elias used those shell companies, with Savannah's signature, which they'd pressured her to give on a stack of innocuous-looking documents, to execute a hostile takeover of that small tech company. The founder, a good guy named Leo, lost everything overnight. Worse, the whole thing was structured to look like Savannah had orchestrated the deal, a move that made the Sterlings look legitimate, like the merger was being done by a new, young, independent businesswoman in the family. She was their puppet. When the lawsuits started flying, Genevieve smiled sweetly at Savannah and said, "Don't worry, darling. Your name will be cleared. It's just paperwork. You're family now. We'll protect you." But they didn't protect her. They hung her out to dry. Leo, heartbroken and totally shook, ended his own life a week later. He left a note that explicitly blamed the corporate raiders at Sterling Finance and their supposed CEO, Savannah Sterling. When the news broke, it was a salty mess. The police started sniffing around. The SEC was looming. The Sterlings had a whole team of top-tier lawyers who immediately started crafting a defense that would paint Savannah as the fall girl, the young, inexperienced wife who was too eager to prove herself, who went rogue and made a bad play. Beckett gave a teary-eyed press conference, looking all heartbroken, talking about how his sweet, naive wife had been too ambitious and was now in a deep, dark place. He never once mentioned his father or Genevieve. Savannah realized what they were doing when the lead lawyer, a real shark named Vance, casually mentioned during a meeting, "Mrs. Sterling, the plea deal we're discussing will ensure you only serve minimal time, 2 years, maybe 3, at a nice low-security facility, but it will protect the family's assets and Mr. Sterling's reputation. That's the real win here, 2 years, for a crime they pushed her into, for a life they broke." Savannah finally found her spine. She packed a small bag while Beckett was playing golf, read, networking with his father's cronies, left her ring on the kitchen counter, and drove straight to my place in Charleston. She was a shell of a girl, pale, quiet, with these massive, hollow eyes. She hadn't cried yet, which worried me more than anything. She walked in and just whispered, "Nana, I need out." They are not playing. I didn't ask a single question. I just hugged her, held that tiny, trembling frame, and felt the ice-cold rage build up inside me. They took her innocence, her reputation, and now they wanted to lock her up just to protect their precious status quo. That's not how we roll, not in this family. I sat her down, gave her some sweet tea and a grilled cheese. Comfort food, you know? Then I looked her straight in the eye. "Savannah," I said, my voice low and steady, "you are safe here, but you gotta listen up. You can't fight a Sterling with a pink slip and a court date. You fight a Sterling by knowing their darkness better than they know their own damn light." That night, I opened my secret phone. Yeah, I have one. Don't you judge me? And pulled up a number I hadn't dialed in 20 years. A number for a man who used to handle all my non-real estate business, a man who was a ghost in the system, a fixer who could make problems disappear and secrets surface. His name was Marcus. No last name needed. The phone rang twice. A deep, gravelly voice answered, "All business." "Yeah? It's Vivian," I said, my voice like steel wrapped in velvet. A long, heavy silence, the kind that lets you know the other person is processing a whole lot of history. Then, Vivian. "Well, look who finally decided to come out of the woodwork. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Marcus," I said, looking out at the soft glow of the marsh outside my window. "I need you to pull a thread, a big one. The Sterling family, Elias and Genevieve, their boy Beckett. I need everything. I mean the real buried, nasty tea, the stuff that smells like dead fish and old money. Start with the Crestwood merger 10 years back. I think that was their first big no-cap dirty move. I need it yesterday. The Sterlings?" He scoffed. "That's a real high-key target, Viv. What did they do to finally get you off the porch?" I looked down the hall where Savannah was finally asleep, her face bruised by fear. "They hurt my blood, Marcus. They hurt my girl, and they tried to make her their scapegoat." My voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. "I don't want them embarrassed, darling. I want them broken. I want their empire to collapse so hard the sound echoes all the way to Manhattan. I want them to lose everything, down to the last gilded spoon. You up for a little justice?" I could almost hear his slow, wicked smile through the phone. "Justice is my favorite flavor, Vivian. Consider the thread pulled. We're in it to win it." I hung up, a strange sense of calm washing over me. The old Vivian, the one who fought dirty in the 80s to keep her head above water, was back. The game had changed, but the rules of a good war were eternal. I walked back into the living room, picked up that diamond wedding ring Savannah had left behind, and slipped it into a small velvet pouch. It was the first domino. The rest of them were about to fall, and I was going to enjoy the sound of every single crash. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a hostile takeover of my family's peace, and the price of ransom was the Sterling legacy. Game on, you fancy clowns. Savannah slept for almost 12 hours straight, the kind of deep, dead-to-the-world sleep you only get when the high-octane fear finally crashes. When she woke up, she was quiet, not crying, which was a good sign. The tears were done. Now it was the cold, hard realization setting in. She sat at my kitchen counter, drinking coffee I'd brewed strong enough to wake the dead, staring at the marsh grass. "Nana," she finally said, her voice raspy, totally different from her usual bright chatter. "What did I do? I mean, besides being a simp and marrying that narc." I pushed a plate of buttery biscuits toward her. "You did what they pushed you to do, baby. You trusted family, which is a low-key mistake when that family's got a black heart and $1 billion. They thought you were soft. They thought you'd take the fall, go to jail, and be so grateful they didn't let you drown in the press you'd keep your mouth shut forever. That's the Sterling playbook. It's trash, but it works on the weak." "I'm not weak," she whispered, her hands gripping the mug. "No, you're not. You're my blood, and we don't break. We bend, we study, and then we snap back so hard the noise registers on the Richter scale." I gave her the whole rundown about Marcus. I didn't get into the specifics, didn't need her shook by the details of my past life, just that he was a legend, a ghost. The guy who could make secrets walk right out of a locked vault and onto the front page. "He's pulling the thread on the Crestwood merger," I told her. "The Crestwood deal. That was the real OG sin for Elias Sterling. About 10 years back, he'd bought up a massive old-school manufacturing company, Crestwood Industries, that was deep in the Rust Belt. It was a hostile takeover, pure power move. Elias said he was going to revitalize the town, keep the jobs. Instead, he stripped the assets, fired practically everyone, and dumped the toxic waste onto some cheap land near a low-income community outside of Cleveland. The whole thing reeked. But Elias had the kind of lawyers that could make a turd smell like a rose garden. They bought off the city council, scared the locals silent, and buried the evidence 6 feet under layers of corporate paper. That night, my secure phone buzzed. It was Marcus. I went out onto the porch, the air thick and warm, and answered. "Talk to me, Marcus." "Spill the tea, Vivian." "You're right. The Crestwood file is a hot mess," he drawled, the static making his voice sound like it was coming from a bunker. "It's uglier than a mud fence. Elias didn't just dump waste. He bribed the head of the EPA regional office, a guy named Dale Hollis, to sign off on the site closing way early. Hollis got a sweet severance and a VP gig at one of Sterling's smaller firms, all clean on paper. A bribe isn't enough. I need the why, I pressed. Why risk the Hollis guy? Elias has a legal team that could make the devil look like a choir boy. There's something they were covering up, something they couldn't just lawyer their way out of. Marcus paused. "Yeah, this is where it gets salty. The waste dump wasn't just toxic. It was leaching into the local water table fast. The internal reports I dug up, the ones that never saw the light of day, showed a cluster of pediatric cancer cases in that community. They knew, Viv. They knew the kids were getting sick right before they closed the plant. They just fast-tracked the bribe to Hollis to shut down the official investigation before the real bodies started stacking up." My stomach turned. I closed my eyes, taking a slow, deep breath. This wasn't just corporate greed. This was pure evil. It gave me the chill. That's the nuclear option, Marcus. That's the thing that takes a legacy down for good. That's high-key federal prison time. The kind that money can't buy you out of. Can you tie Hollis's bribe directly to Elias? I've got the deposit trail. Hollis's severance went into a shell company in the Caymans, then immediately into an account registered under the name of Sterling's mistress, a former assistant he moved to Miami and put in an expensive condo. We're talking a cool $5 million. The money flow is a straight line. The transfer documents all lead back to Elias's private accounting firm, the one he uses to hide his extra assets from Genevieve. Genevieve, I repeated, tasting the name like ash. She runs the legal side, the PR. She knows how to manage a crisis. Hollis's testimony would be messy, but she'd spin it. The mistress? That's gold, but I need to hit them all at once. What about Beckett? Does the son have any skeletons that aren't just pushing his wife into a lake? Beckett's a different kind of trash. He's into some real low-key shady stuff with the startup he supposedly runs. He's got a massive gambling problem, the kind where he owes major debtors a ton of cash. He's been skimming from the startup's operational budget to cover his losses in Vegas and Macau. Nothing big enough to trigger an external audit, but it's enough to prove he's not the sharp businessman Daddy claims. More importantly, he's got a burner phone he uses for these side hustles. I've got access to the text logs. It's juicy. A burner phone, I mused. That was the key to his arrogance. He thought he was untouchable. What's the juiciest thing on that phone, Marcus? What will make him sweat in a courtroom, not just in a divorce settlement? He's high-key been sending explicit, compromising photos and texts to Tatum's college roommate, a girl who's only 18. And he's been paying her off to keep her mouth shut. He calls her his insurance policy. If Savannah filed for divorce, he was going to leak the photos and claim she was emotionally unstable and having an affair to discredit her, making her lose everything in the settlement. It's all there, Viv. The texts, the transfer receipts, the whole ugly truth. A cold laugh escaped me. Of course he was. He was planning to nuke my girl's reputation just to keep his toys. He truly is Elias's son. Okay, Marcus, here's the play. We hit them all, but we don't just leak it. We make it an event. We need to establish a clear narrative. The Sterlings are a family of predators who cover their tracks with cash and the name of an innocent woman. I laid out the strategy, the details of which I won't print here because, honey, some things you take to the grave. But the short version was, Elias was going down for the kids and the EPA. Genevieve was going down for orchestrating the cover-up and the corporate fraud. And Beckett? He was going down for the statutory mess and the skimming, which would be a neat little bow on the divorce papers. The scandal would be so total, their stock would tank faster than a lead balloon. Now, about timing, I said. Savannah has a preliminary hearing next Tuesday to address her involvement in the tech takeover. That's the date we circle. We need to hit them right before that. Get the Hollis story out to a trusted old-school investigative journalist, the kind that can't be bought and loves a good power fall. I'll make a separate call. And Marcus, the Beckett dirt? That goes straight to Genevieve anonymously, 2 hours before the Hollis story breaks. I want her completely rattled before the big bomb hits. Marcus chuckled, a dry, scratchy sound. You're a real piece of work, Vivian. I'm thinking this is going to be the most satisfying job I've had in a decade. I'll be in touch. I hung up, feeling a familiar hum of power, the kind that comes from knowing you have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and a plan to use it as a sledgehammer. I walked back inside. Savannah was still staring out the window, but now there was a flicker in her eyes, a small ember of fire where the fear used to be. We found the thread, baby, I told her, sitting across from her. It's about toxic waste and a dead girl's father, and now it's about a little girl named Chloe who lost her life because Elias Sterling didn't want to spend $10 extra on proper disposal. Your ordeal? It was just the final sloppy act in a long, dark play. Now we rewrite the ending. We don't just clear your name. We nuke their whole operation. You ready to play dirty? She looked at me, really looked at me, and that terrified, fragile look finally broke. She didn't smile, didn't nod. She just said in that new, steel-edged voice, "Tell me what I need to do, Nana. No cap." The game was officially on. The Sterling Empire didn't know it yet, but their whole world was about to get a major, permanent shaking, and I was holding the seismic switch. The next few days were a blur of high-stakes, low-key moves. Savannah stayed with me in Charleston, staring at the marsh, getting that steel in her eyes. I didn't let her touch the news, the phone, or anything that smelled like the outside world. She needed to detox from the Sterling brand of poison. Meanwhile, I was running the show from my porch, using that burner phone like it was an extension of my own arm. Marcus was on it. He's got this network of guys who can dig up dirt from the actual trenches, not just the deep web. He confirmed that the investigative journalist, a bulldog named Maxine Riley working out of D.C., the kind of woman who doesn't do favors, only justice, was ready to run the Crestwood story. Maxine's whole thing is exposing corporate malfeasance that hurts regular people. Elias Sterling poisoning a whole town's water supply to save a buck? That's her Pulitzer material, no cap. The timing was everything. We needed the initial blast to hit Genevieve and Elias so hard they were on the defensive, completely shook, right before Savannah's preliminary hearing on Tuesday morning. I had Marcus set the pieces up perfectly. Phase 1. Rattle the matriarch. Monday, 8 p.m. EST. Genevieve Sterling's whole life is her image. She is the glue that holds that toxic family together with a smile and a charity gala. I wanted her to doubt everything, starting with her own son. Marcus sent the burner phone texts and the payoff receipts, the whole tea about Beckett and Tatum's college roommate, the statutory mess, to Genevieve's personal, heavily encrypted email. No note, no explanation. Just the raw, undeniable proof that her golden boy was a low-key predator and a liability that could shatter their perfect reputation. My phone rang about an hour later. It was Marcus laughing that dry, scratchy laugh of his. "Did you hear that, Viv?" he asked. "Hear what?" That was the sound of Genevieve Sterling's martini glass hitting a marble floor. High-key, she's losing her mind. She thought she had all the secrets. Now she knows her son is a ticking time bomb, and she can't call her husband, because he's blissfully unaware and probably chasing that Miami mistress we just uncovered. "Good," I said, feeling that familiar, cold satisfaction. Let her stew in it. Let her try to figure out who has the goods on her narc of a son. She needs to feel helpless, just like she made my granddaughter feel. Phase 2. The nuclear bomb. Tuesday, 6 a.m. Est, Tuesday morning. The day of the hearing. I was dressed in my best black suit, the kind that says rich, dignified, and totally lethal. Savannah, looking sharp but still pale, was next to me, gripping my hand. We were on a private jet heading north to the city courthouse. At 6 a.m. sharp, Maxine Riley's story dropped across every major financial and investigative news outlet. It wasn't just an article. It was a 20-page exposé with documents, internal memos, and testimony from that poor Cleveland community. The headline was plastered everywhere. "The Sterling Legacy, built on a lie, financed by children's cancer." It laid out the Crestwood plant, the toxic waste, the desperate parents, the dead child named Chloe, the EPA bribe to Dale Hollis, and the damning paper trail leading directly to Elias Sterling's private accounts. The market hadn't even opened, but the noise was deafening. Sterling Finance stock, which had been untouchable, was already halted in pre-market trading, facing a catastrophic collapse. The phones at their Manhattan headquarters were ringing off the hook, not with deals, but with angry investors and federal subpoenas. "Spill the tea, Nana," Savannah whispered, looking at the newsfeed on my secured tablet. She wasn't horrified, she was transfixed. She was watching her abuser's world burn, and it was the first time I saw genuine, unburdened relief in her eyes. "That's the sound of justice, baby," I told her. "Elias is on a private flight home from his mistress in Miami, probably getting chewed out by his lawyers and the FBI by now. He can't fix this with money. This is criminal, federal, and it involves dead kids. It's the end of his legacy, no cap." Phase 3. The coup de grace. Tuesday, 8:45 a.m. Est. We arrived at the courthouse. The place was a zoo. Not because of Savannah's little hearing. That was small-time corporate fraud. But because the media had descended on the courthouse hoping to catch Elias or Genevieve in question. Them about the real scandal. Reporters were shouting, cameras flashing. The whole extra shebang. Elias and Genevieve arrived separately, not together, which was the first sign of a massive fracture. Elias looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 hours. His tailored suit looked rumpled, his face was gray, and the arrogance was replaced by a twitchy fear. He tried to bulldoze his way through the crowd, shouting, "No comment. This is a fabrication." Genevieve was right behind him, but she wasn't looking at the press. She was looking at Elias with pure, venomous hatred. She knew about Beckett's mess, and she knew Elias's bigger mess was going to tank her status. She'd protected his business from everything except his own monstrous decisions. She wanted him gone, legally, and Beckett. He was nowhere in sight. He was too busy panicking over the gambling investigation Marcus had quietly tipped off to the Nevada Gaming Commission. As we walked past them, I paused, looking Elias straight in his terrified eyes. "Elias," I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a stiletto. "Tell me, how's Chloe's family doing these days?" He actually flinched, his eyes going wide and frantic. He opened his mouth to deny it, but Genevieve cut him off. "Vivian," she snarled, her voice a strained whisper. "You have done this. You're salty because your granddaughter married up, and you're trying to burn it all down." I looked at her, smiled a slow, dangerous smile, and dropped the final personal bomb. "You think I did this for status, Genevieve? Honey, I did this because you and Elias made my girl a scapegoat for the rot you two created. And that little insurance policy your sweet boy Beckett has, the one with the 18-year-old college girl? The police will be looking for him next. Enjoy the divorce, darling. You two deserve each other." I didn't wait for her response. I took Savannah's arm and walked into the courthouse. The look on Genevieve's face, the shock, The realization that her whole life was unraveling was better than any $1,000 therapy session. Inside, the judge was clearly agitated. Savannah's lawyer, a good man I had retained ages ago for just in case, stood ready. The opposing counsel, the sterling shark Vance, stepped up, ready to request a continuance and then, inevitably, put the blame squarely on Savannah. But before he could speak, Savannah's lawyer cleared his throat and addressed the court, holding up a pristine legal document. Your Honor, in light of the catastrophic and ongoing federal investigations and criminal charges that are being prepared against Elias Sterling, the principal of Sterling Finance and its corporate entity, we are not requesting a continuance. We are filing on behalf of my client, Savannah Sterling. He paused for dramatic effect, letting the silence hang heavy. A petition for dissolution of marriage, an immediate, uncontested emergency divorce based on the husband's moral turpitude, and a full cooperation agreement with the FBI, SEC, and EPA to testify to the corporate fraud in exchange for full immunity for my client, who was a victim of coercion. We also moved to present evidence that the corporate entities used in the fraudulent transaction were set up under duress, specifically to frame my client. We are prepared to start providing evidence immediately. The courtroom erupted. Elias's attorney, Vance, was shook, literally sputtering, clutching his tie. He hadn't been prepared for a betrayal this deep, this fast. He thought Savannah was weak, but she wasn't. She was a Sloane. And the Sterlings were about to learn that we don't just survive a storm. We are the storm. This was just the beginning of the end for them. The courtroom chaos after that divorce announcement? No cap, it was extra. The judge called for an immediate recess, his face turning about 3 shades of purple. Vance, the Sterling shark, tried to object, spitting out legal jargon about procedural malpractice. But Savannah's lawyer, who I'd prepped and paid handsomely, just smiled a slow, knowing smile. He'd dropped the bomb, and now the Sterlings had to deal with the fallout. We slipped out the side entrance, right past the frantic crowd of reporters, and got into an unmarked sedan. The air outside felt different, cleaner, even with all the diesel fumes and the shouting. Savannah was finally breathing. "Nana," she said, leaning her head back. "I feel empty, but good empty, you know." "I know, baby. That's the feeling of cutting out the rot. That's freedom. Now the real work starts." The immediate aftermath was pure, unadulterated carnage for the Sterlings. The Crestwood expose had hit them like a freight train. Elias Sterling was officially under federal investigation. The EPA had sent agents to the corporate headquarters. His private jet was seized as an asset. He couldn't fly back to his mistress, couldn't run his empire. The board of Sterling Finance, panicked by the catastrophic stock crash and the looming criminal charges, voted him out as CEO by lunchtime. He was stripped of his power, his reputation, and his freedom, all in a matter of hours. Genevieve? She was facing a disaster on 2 fronts. The public one, Elias's downfall, and the private one, Beckett. She was trying to manage the PR nightmare, but every phone call she made was just another angry investor or a rival firm circling their assets like vultures. And then there was the Beckett problem. She was a mother, and the threat of her son facing serious charges that included a minor, was the one thing her iron will couldn't handle. Marcus called me while we were driving. His voice was laced with that delicious sense of schadenfreude. "Vivian, you won't believe the tea," he chuckled. "Beckett was trying to fly to Vegas this morning to meet his bookie and settle some debt before the bad news hit. He got stopped at the private terminal, not by the Gaming Commission, but by the NYPD with an initial warrant. Genevieve. She had him picked up." "She what?" I asked, shook. "She called an old family friend at the precinct. She had him detained for questioning in relation to corporate fraud. She used Elias's scandal as cover to save Beckett from the real mess, the statutory and blackmail charges, by forcing him into a safe space. A high-key jail cell where she could control the narrative and keep him from talking to anyone who wasn't her lawyer. She's protecting the name, Viv. Even if it means locking up her own son. That woman is ruthless. No cap." "She's a viper," I agreed, a genuine shiver running up my spine. Genevieve had finally chosen. She would sacrifice Elias and the immediate corporate assets to protect Beckett's long-term legal viability. It was a cold calculation, but smart. But the best part? Marcus continued. The reason she went all in on this? The moment she had him picked up, she was served with divorce papers from Elias. The second Elias heard Genevieve was sacrificing Beckett for the firm's stock, he panicked. He's trying to protect his remaining assets by separating them from her, claiming she was the corporate mastermind. They are literally trying to nuke each other right now in separate courtrooms. Perfect, I sighed, leaning back. They're eating themselves alive. That's exactly the goal. When predators turn on each other, you just step back and watch the show. Savannah was listening to all of this, her eyes wide. So Beckett's arrested. My name is clear, and they're both losing everything. Your name isn't clear yet, baby, I corrected her gently. It's exonerated, which is better. You're a cooperating witness, not a criminal. The lawyers will handle the paperwork, but your life is your own again. You are free. The next step was immediate damage control for Savannah. We needed to get her story out. Not through a sensational TV interview, but through a trusted, classy channel. She was not a victim seeking pity. She was a witness seeking justice. I arranged a meeting with a respected female anchor in New York City, a woman known for her journalistic integrity and calm demeanor. Savannah walked into that studio, pale but poised. She didn't cry. She didn't talk about her feelings for Beckett. She talked about Leo, the founder who had died. She spoke about the coercion, the fear, and the moment she realized she was being used as a human shield for corporate crime. She looked straight into the camera and said, "They told me I was part of the family, and then they tried to make me pay for their sins. I won't let them ruin another life. I'm cooperating fully with the authorities, and I will testify to everything I know, no cap." Her statement resonated. The tide of public opinion shifted instantly. She wasn't the corporate shark they tried to paint. She was the scapegoat, the only good person in the entire Sterling mess. That move effectively sealed the deal on her immunity. As we were leaving the studio, I got a text from Marcus. It was a single, cryptic message. "Vance just called me. He wants to meet. Said he has something you might find." Extra Vance, Elias's shark lawyer, was calling my fixer. That meant the walls were closing in fast. Vance wasn't loyal to the Sterlings. He was loyal to the winner, and right now, the winner was me. I looked at Savannah, truly free for the first time since she met that family. The fight for her freedom was over. The fight for the Sterlings' total collapse. That was heading into its final, most vicious round. We had pulled the rug out from under them. Now, we just needed to make sure they broke their necks on the way down. The final piece of the puzzle, the part that would burn the entire legacy to the ground, was about to be put in place. Game on. I was sitting in my hotel suite in Manhattan, sipping an iced tea that was probably older than Beckett Sterling's integrity, when Marcus walked in. He looked tired but energized, like a snake that just shed its skin after a huge meal. "Vance is a rat, no cap," Marcus said, dropping a manila envelope on the polished mahogany table. "He knows Elias is toast. He knows Genevieve is compromised trying to protect her boy. He's looking to save his own skin, and more importantly, his multi-million-dollar retainer." "Spill the tea, Marcus. What's the extra thing he had for us?" I asked, not bothering to reach for the envelope yet. Vance was a theatrical man. The real power was in the narrative, not the paper. "He gave us the location of the Sterling family vault," Marcus announced. "Not the bank safe deposit box, but the actual physical vault hidden under their East End estate in the Hamptons. It's where they keep the real dirt, physical records, original deeds, and, get this, a collection of priceless, totally illegal artifacts Elias acquired over the years. We're talking ancient loot, stuff that's supposed to be in museums in Greece and Egypt." I finally reached for the envelope, my eyes narrowing. Illegal artifacts, tax fraud. That's what Elias was protecting the most. He figured paper records could be burned, and money could be laundered. But those physical objects were his final, untouchable proof of status. "His legacy, high key." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "Vance said it's the anchor of their empire, the stuff they could never declare for tax purposes, the stuff that ties them to international smuggling and money laundering. He gave me the security codes and the blueprint. It's got a weak spot in the ventilation shaft. He figured if this stuff surfaced after the stock collapse, it would ensure the entire family fortune is seized by the federal government, leaving nothing for the divorce settlement or the lawyers. That rat Vance is trying to make sure nobody gets paid except the government," I mused. a slow smile spreading across my face. He wants to guarantee there are no assets left to pay his massive bill. Petty but effective. He just handed us the last nail for the coffin. I looked out the window at the skyline. Savannah's immunity was secure. Elias was a corporate corpse, about to face jail time for the Crestwood mess. Genevieve had sacrificed her husband to save her son, a move that would leave her rich but isolated. But the Sterling name, the legacy, would still stand, a monument to greed. That was the only thing I hadn't destroyed. Yet. Marcus, we're not going to leak the vault contents, I decided. We are going to make it an event, the kind of grand finale they deserve. The final strike, Friday night in the Hamptons. 3 days later, the chaos was peaking. Elias and Genevieve were both locked in separate brutal legal battles, communicating only through their attorneys. Beckett was still in protective police custody, his minders paid by his mother, keeping him from being served with the statutory charges. On Friday evening, a massive fundraising gala was scheduled at the Sterling estate in the Hamptons, a high-profile charity event that Genevieve, in a desperate attempt to show strength and normalcy, refused to cancel. It was to be the final, pathetic gathering of their fading power. I had Marcus's team work their magic. Using the blueprint Vance provided, they slipped onto the property, bypassed the alarms, and went straight for the hidden vault beneath the old wine cellar. They didn't steal the artifacts. No, they tagged every single piece with GPS trackers and micro cameras. Then they did something extra. They swapped out the most ancient, illegal pieces, the ones that had the highest monetary and legal value, with perfect, meticulous fakes. But the masterpiece of the operation wasn't the swap. It was the placement of one small, innocent-looking device inside the vault. As the gala reached its peak, the air thick with expensive perfume, false smiles, and the scent of desperation, I was watching the whole thing on a live feed from a secure location nearby. I watched Genevieve in her custom gown, trying to look poised while her life crumbled around her. I watched Elias arrive, flanked by security and looking like a ghost. And then, I gave the signal. Marcus's team hit the switch on the small device. It was a timed canister of concentrated skunk spray, the super-strength, non-toxic kind used for pranks and deterring animals, but designed to permeate every surface. The vault's ventilation system, which Vance had pointed out as the weakest link, immediately sucked the rancid, chemical-grade odor into the core of the house. The immediate effect was pandemonium. That smell, the concentrated stench of pure, decaying garbage and sulfur, didn't just stink. It stuck to everything. Clothes, draperies, expensive Persian rugs. I watched on the screen as the elegant crowd started gagging, running for the doors. Genevieve's perfectly constructed mask finally cracked. Her frantic, high-pitched scream of disgust was music to my ears, but the stench was just the salty distraction. The next morning, as the Sterling's cleaners were trying desperately to salvage the mansion, a total loss, by the way, that smell doesn't wash out easy. The FBI and the Interpol swooped in with warrants. They weren't looking for financial records anymore. They were looking for smuggled artifacts. They followed the ventilation system to the hidden vault. And there they found the evidence, the fakes, which were immediately traced back to the illegal acquisition trail. More importantly, the microcameras and trackers Marcus's team had placed confirmed that the real artifacts had been there just hours before. The Interpol had enough evidence to issue international warrants for Elias's arrest for international smuggling and looting of cultural heritage. An even bigger, darker charge than the EPA mess. Elias was arrested on his Hamptons lawn, in front of the press and the police tape, for charges that would guarantee he'd spend the rest of his life in a federal penitentiary. Genevieve, realizing the final, complete destruction of their financial and legal standing, suffered a massive panic attack and was taken away by ambulance. Beckett was left alone in police custody, with no family to post his bail. Savannah and I watched the final reports on TV from my cozy, clean home in Charleston. They lost everything. "Nana," she said quietly, a genuine smile on her face. "The house, the money, the name, everything. They didn't just lose it, baby," I told her, finally resting my case. "They had it taken, and that is a huge difference. You are free now. Go live your life. But always remember this. When they think you're weak, you hit them with the truth. Hard, fast, and no cap. The Sterling Empire was over, and for the first time in a long time, the world felt a little more just.